unified. He wrote it with Senator Tim Scott. Congressman, got to have you respond directly to that. Do you think it was necessary for him to tell the president in the step back that it was financed by your opponents, by Hillary Clinton?
It's certainly a relevant fact. Whether or not he should have told the president, the FBI certainly should have told the FISA court. That's my bigger concern, is they didn't tell the folks who authorized the warrant. It's a really relevant fact. It helps you understand the motivation behind that salacious material or allegations. But for sure, they should have told the court. I think it would have been nice to tell the person who was the subject of the dossier also.
Well, he had conversations with the president. So if the president found out about this dossier, don't you think his question to Comey was probably, where did you get this information? He would. I'm almost certain he asked him that. And so for Comey to say, I never told him it was financed by Hillary Clinton, what does that say about him?
Well, of course, you would want to know where you got the information, because that determines how reliable it is and whether or not it can be used. So we already know the FBI did not vet or investigate the allegations in the dossier. So if I were the president, I'd want to know, where'd you get it, and how have you vetted it before you used it?
Sure. Well, apparently, when they were talking about the dossier at the Trump Tower meeting during the transition, Congressman, it does sound, according to the book, that at one point Mr. Trump was told by Mr. Comey, we are not investigating you. So that lines up with what the president has said in the past. And also he goes on to say that apparently it does not, whatever President Trump told Mr. Comey, it does not rise to the level of obstruction of justice. He did nothing wrong. Ultimately, doesn't that help the president's case?
These Comey memos are Defense Exhibit A in an obstruction of justice. I've read them. Very few members of Congress have, and no one outside of Congress has read the Comey memos. I think they ought to be released. I think they ought to be released publicly, but they certainly ought to be released to Congress. They would be Defense Exhibit A in an obstruction of justice prosecution.
Is there any reason they should not be revealed? I mean, are there national secrets in there, grand jury testimony, any of that stuff the DOJ always says?
I hope not. Comey gave them to a law professor, so I hope not.
What about the idea of a former FBI director writing a book? What was the process? What is the process? Would he have had to, would the DOJ have to read the book before to make sure he wasn't releasing classified information? And what do you think about an FBI director writing a book?
I think it's sad. I think it's sad. One of the things Director Comey and I did agree on is we need an apolitical FBI. We had some fairly heated exchanges about that. I can't think of anyone who's done a better job of politicizing the FBI than he has in the last 36 to 48 hours by talking about tanning bed goggles and the length of a tie. That is beneath the dignity of the offices that he held. So I'm really disappointed whether or not the intelligence communities vetted this book. I hope he let them do it so he's not disseminating classified information. My guess is he did. But the writing of the book in general, and then some of the things that he's talking about, are just frankly beneath the dignity of some really important offices he once held.
Talked about how much stronger he was. The president wasn't as tall as he thought. He tried to bring him in. You got to be a stronger guy to bring me in than the president is. Real quick, when he came out with his press conference October 28th and said that we found these additional emails on Anthony Weiner's laptop, he did it because he was under the assumption that she was going to win. And she didn't want her to start her presidency under the guise of a scandal or illegitimate. What's your reaction to that?
Well, there were a lot of things that could have called into question the legitimacy of that investigation, including what he's now made reference to that some of us have alluded to a lot in the past, which is the real reason he had the July 5th press conference. It wasn't the tarmac. It was information he had about Loretta Lynch that if it became public, people would question their objectivity. Right. Look, I defended him in 2016. This is Hillary Clinton's fault that he found himself in that position, and it was Democrats that wanted to put him in jail this time last year. It wasn't Republicans. So he had a tough 2016, but he's making it worse by writing this kind of a tabloid book.
Congressman, what about Pompeo? Will he be confirmed?
I hope so. You know, Ansley, he got 13 Democrat votes a year ago. I mean, go back and look at how many Republicans opposed John Kerry and Hillary Clinton. Almost none. So for a group that likes to talk about bipartisanship and reaching across the aisle, you have a uniquely well-qualified Secretary of State candidate, and you can't find a single Democrat on the committee to support him?
Yeah,
Do you think same-sex marriage should have been a question? That's what Senator Cory Booker wanted to know.
I know.
No, I doubt they asked that of Clinton or Kerry, and I guarantee they didn't ask, can you be independent from the person who's giving you the job? It's a double standard. Thank goodness Mike Pompeo is uniquely well qualified, and I hope some Democrats not on the committee will insist that he be brought to the floor.
Well, there are a number of Democrats who live in states that Donald Trump won big, that if they don't vote that way, they're going to be in hot water come November. Trey Gowdy, Congressman from the great state of South Carolina. We know it's really noisy there in the Capitol. Thank you very much for talking to us today.
Well, in the heat of the 2016 presidential election, Jim Comey calling this now infamous press conference regarding the Clinton investigation.
Although we did not find clear evidence that Secretary Clinton or her colleagues intended to violate laws governing the handling of classified information, there is evidence that they were extremely careless in their handling of very sensitive, highly classified information.
Well, now, in his new book coming out this week, the former FBI director explains his thought process at that time.
But our next guest says that egregious move was just one of the many reasons the FBI botched the Clinton investigation. Joining us now is former special counsel to President Bill Clinton and the author of The Unmaking of the President 2016, Lanny Davis. Lanny, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. Fine.
So you say that
Sober.
We have not one but two violations of due process. This is what you shared documents with the DOJ's Inspector General. Explain to us what you've laid out.
That quote is a firing offense. There isn't a federal prosecutor or a state attorney general or a state prosecutor that would say that a detective or an investigator, much less an FBI director, is allowed to characterize evidence without an indictment. There's an expression in the Justice Department: we don't shame without charging. James Comey violated that rule. He should have been fired then by Loretta Lynch and President Obama.
Yet you were calling for James Comey's firing back under the Obama years. I want to remind our audience the letter, the James Comey letter back in October 2016 to Congress, which was the reopening of the Clinton email investigation. It says the FBI has learned of the existence of emails that appear to be pertinent to the investigation. I agree the FBI should take appropriate investigative steps designed to allow investigators to review these emails. You say that is one example of violating due process, right?
More than yet, yes, it's a violation of due process to reveal what an investigator is doing in a federal investigation. It is also a firing offense to publicly reveal what you're doing in a criminal investigation. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein said it's a false choice to say conceal versus speak. A federal investigator must be silent before an indictment so someone can get due process. Moreover, Mr. Comey is lying when he said he was, quote, obligated to write that letter because he promised Congress. He now knows that that's a false statement. A knowing false statement is a lie. He knows all he said to Congress is, I will, quote, look at new information. He never said, I will turn over something to you where I haven't looked. Had he looked first, we now know it took 6 days to determine there was nothing there and Hillary Clinton would be president. But he's now lying on all his television interviews, including tonight on ABC, which I saw a clip of, where he says he was, quote, obligated to do so because he promised Congress. That is a knowing falsehood because he knows the facts, and I call it a lie.
Lanny, let me ask you, because James Comey also raises some questions about Attorney General Loretta Lynch. You actually say that she should have fired Comey. Is that correct?
Well, she recused herself because of the unfortunate visit that occurred on the airstrip in Phoenix by President Clinton. But Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates on October 27th, 2016, could have picked up the phone and ordered Comey not to send his letter. She knowingly chose not to. And for the rest of her life, she will know it's on her hands that we have Donald Trump as president, because she could have ordered Comey not to send the letter, and Comey himself knew that he violated over 50 years of Justice Department policy by doing anything within 11 days of a presidential election that could impact the election. But you know what? Comey gets to decide which rules to follow and which rules not to. You know why? Because he's James Comey, and that should not be. He's an FBI director reporting to the Deputy Attorney General, the Attorney General, and the President. He's not a power unto himself.
All right. Well, you mentioned that interview on ABC's airing tonight. George Stephanopoulos sitting down with former FBI Director James Comey. And in one of the questions, I don't know if you've seen this specific part, he asked James Comey about the decision to reopen the Clinton email investigation and whether or not the polling or thinking that Hillary Clinton was ultimately going to win had an impact on his decision. Let's play some of that.
At some level, wasn't the decision to reveal influenced by your assumption that Hillary Clinton was going to win?
It must have been. I don't remember consciously thinking about that, but it must have been, because I was operating in a world where Hillary Clinton was going to beat Donald Trump.
It was a good question. What did you make of his answer, though? A lot of eyebrows have been raised from that.
Only a narcissist who thinks he's above everybody and he gets to decide what to do would answer that way, and it's disgusting that we have an FBI director who puts himself above the law, above the Attorney General and the President. He gets to decide what's best for the country, that he didn't want Hillary Clinton to be elected without writing a speculative letter that 6 days later turned out to be about nothing. Look, I respect Comey for standing up to Donald Trump, who asked for personal loyalty, an offense against the Constitution, in my judgment. It's the only thing I respect about Comey. Everything else is a renegade narcissist who thought that the FBI and Mr. McCabe as well were above the law. They could get to do whatever they want to do to protect themselves, when what he was really doing was protecting his political rear end with the Republicans, because he thought that Hillary Clinton was going to get elected.
Lanny, thank you so much. The author of